cloud right now is that the piece of System Center 2012 that will allow us to manage public clouds, App Controller, doesn't have a public beta yet. So
right,
there is no path.
no limiting
yet.
factors, I guess. Do you want to do me one quick
We'll
favor and just tilt your screen down a little bit?
Bring my screen down.
There we go.
Okay. Better?
Much better. Much better.
Okay.
Otherwise, we were looking up at you, which is which we're kind of all used to anyway. Within the community, looking up to Mr. Zerger.
Looking at my bogeys.
I wasn't going to say that. I was taking a different approach, saying that we all look up to you. But before we get this episode, sorry, what was that?
Said understood. I appreciate that.
What I am going to do is just say that before we get this episode kicked off, I just wanted to mention to everybody that we do have our competition still running. This is we're giving away a series of books. We've got quite a number of the System Center Unleashed, so that would be both Opalis, Config Manager, Operations Manager. So we've got a number of the Unleashed books to give away, as well as the PowerShell Bible once that is released. So to find out the details of what you need to do, what I would suggest is that you pop on over to the System Center podcast website. For those watching at home, I'm just bringing up the website right now. There's a big screen there at the front that says win a copy of these books. Just click on that and follow the directions. I'm going to be open and honest here and say that I guess the main reason that we're doing this is to try and drive some traffic to the podcast. We want to try and generate a little bit of interest, and we're relying on the people that are active listeners at the moment to tell a friend, effectively. So within the giveaway details, most, if not all of those, are around joining us within the Facebook community, but predominantly, I guess, using social media to tell your friends about the podcast, so that we can grow this and generate more interest, get more people in on the podcast, and just generally, we're looking at expanding the network within the next month or so to include some great new podcasts covering various other topics, and all of your feedback certainly goes a long way to help making this a better podcast. And as I said, I'm being open and honest here. If you can tell a friend and get them to pass that down, then our audience will grow and we'll be able to provide you with much, much more. So head on over to systemcenterpodcast.com. Click on the big banner at the top. It's the Big Tech Book Bundle giveaway, and help us reach the masses. So I'm glad I've got that out of the way. We can move on to the topic of the week, which, as promised last week, we said that we would spend some time talking about the upgrade and migration paths for System Center 2012, Operations Manager 2012, and what you need to do to get there. So for those that are running Operations Manager, Microsoft Operations Manager 2005, Pete, I guess we should tell them the bad news. From the get-go, there is no migration or upgrade path. As there wasn't with 2007, let's be honest.
I'm guessing they weren't surprised by that one, hey?
No. So now that we've got that little bit of errata out of the way, where shall we start?
Well, let's start with the setup and upgrade improvements then, I suppose. So, we've all been through the rip and replace operation of MOM 2005 to Ops Manager 2007.
Right.
So the first thing is to know is that we have to have our management group at 2007 R2, which means if we didn't get R2 for free with SA, with software assurance, and we have to go ahead and take the plunge and purchase that and get our SP1 management group up to the R2 level
Right.
before we're going to have any fun with 2012.
And actually on that, is there a minimum CU level that Microsoft are supporting for the upgrade to 2012?
Yeah, so I think in the end we'll see what that looks like. I'm betting that at RTM it's going to be CU5.
Right. Which of course is the most recent CU release.
Yeah. So I'm betting at this point there's probably not going to be a CU6 before we see RTM of this product.
Right. Okay, so there has to be for those on SP1, they must upgrade to R2. I guess the alternative to that, of course, would be that we encourage them to, I guess, have a look at the migration paths as well. So as I said, we're talking about not only the upgrade paths but also the migration paths. So perhaps if we can spend a couple of minutes just talking about, if you are at SP1 and haven't been fortunate enough to get up to R2, what are the options for upgrading? Sorry, not upgrading, but migrating from SP1 to 2012.
Well, so we could look at the traditional rip and replace type option. You can deploy a 2012 agent to a machine that's going to talk to a 2007 R2 management group.
Right.
So the 2012 agent can talk to a down level management group, but the reverse is not true. So if you were to try to allow a 2007 R2 agent to talk to a 2012 management group, it's not going to be possible.
Okay.
So that being said, you're going to have to deal with some new licensing anyway to get to 2012.
Mm-hmm.
Really taking the plunge with with SA and getting to R2 is really going to allow for a lot less disruption in your management group, especially in the production environment when you're trying to make that move.
Sure. Although I guess the benefit of having the 2012 agent that can report to a 2007 SP1 management server is that you can then multi-home, so you can maintain separate infrastructure and migrate the agents across, migrate the management packs, so on and so forth.
Yeah. So we could multi-home and look at the the side by side for a while. So OM12 agents talking to an OM 2007 R2 management group supported. So that would be an easy interim process for sure. And then you could take your management facts from the 2007 environment and install them in OM 2012. Although any instance specific overrides you're going to have to do over again. We could even bring over overrides if all we have are overrides towards classes and groups that are in the off-the-shelf management packs. But that's probably not going to be a reality in most environments. So the value add of getting up to the R2 level and going through the upgrade process is going to be the big reduction in manual effort required to duplicate all of our configuration and our tuning. That's probably taken months to get to a point that we're really happy with. So
right. And I guess that
not impossible, but painful in terms of administrative effort is really what it comes down to as a bottom line.
Sure. I guess the other thing, the other point to note, I guess, is an SP1. If you are running 2007 SP1, chances are, although not necessarily the case, chances are you're going to be running on, say, Windows 2003. You're going to have an SQL 2005 database, and those aren't up to scratch for 2012 either. So there's
right, and that's a good point from an architecture perspective. There are probably a fair number of Ops Manager 2007 environments out there running on SQL 2005. So definitely there's some hardware preparation. Even if you are going to take the easy upgrade path to get to the right version of SQL 2008 and SQL, or excuse me, Windows 2008 on your operating systems.
Yep.
64-bit only is going to be the general rule there. So there could be a fair bit of work in migration, and I think that it still justifies the upgrade path to move your databases from SQL 2005 over to 2008.
Yes.
If for no other reason, when you move from 2005 to 2008, we can really detach that database and reattach, and the SQL engine takes care of the conversion process to bring it up to snuff. So that's not really a difficult process.
Right, and we with that upgrade to 2008, we also then get to leverage some of the newer technology there, online re-indexing, these sorts of things that just weren't present in 2005.
Exactly. So there's going to be some performance benefit. There's definitely going to be the change at the SQL reporting services level. So getting over to that takes a fair bit of work, and I don't think those are exceedingly complex. I think a lot of folks would say that the documentation around the migration from 2005 over to 2008, that enough folks have gone through the pain that most of those problems have been flushed out.
Yep.
And discussed in the community, so you can get over there with, hopefully, I would think, a few hours to a few days of effort, depending on how large your management group is. But really, in terms of carrying forward your investments, all that configuration and tuning and deployment, can potentially save weeks or months of having to go back and retool from scratch.
Right. I mean, everyone's going to be different. There's going to be people out there that are going to use this as an opportunity to refresh the hardware because they've been running 2007 since, since 2007 or 2008, and their hardware is now at a point where it's coming out of warranty and it needs a refresh, etc., etc., etc. So there's going to be multiple scenarios, and we certainly can't cover all of them here. But what we can do, I guess, is provide a best practice type scenario for that upgrade and for that migration.
Yeah, and so for my money, the hardware refresh is another really good point. And for my money, it would make sense to install that new hardware, put put Windows 2008 on there and start plugging in new management servers, a new SQL server, etc., into our 2007 R2 environment.
Mm-hmm.
So we can take that through, basically a seamless upgrade process in production.
Right.
So because we know for a fact if we have to go that route of tuning our management packs all over again, then we take people back emotionally back in time to a time when our management group wasn't tuned and there was lots of alert noise and that sort of thing. So.
Sorry, so stop it.
You're making that where we can.
You're making the nightmares come back. It's a terrible time. Terrible time. Although as a consultant, that's pretty much all we deal with. We don't get the good times because we've left.
We only deal with the bad times, don't we?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's usually a better time about the time we're leaving.
Yes. But that's our job. So, just on another point in regards to the upgrade path. Again, looking at a scenario where you've got a root management server that's not running on Windows 2008 R2, which I believe is the minimum required OS for a management server.
Right.
Let's spend, I guess, a minute. The obvious solution is to create a new management server as a 2008 R2 box that's spec'd out to be a management, to be a well-spec'd management server, and then we do a promote RMS to that box, and then we can continue to upgrade the rest of the infrastructure to 2008 R2. Seems like a logical move.
Yes, yeah, totally agree.
So, I mean, beyond that, again, we've got the scenario or the difficulty of upgrading SQL. Although it's not as painful as it sounds. I'm sure you've done a few 2005 to 2008 SQL upgrades in your time, clustered or not clustered.
Yeah, more than I care to remember. Um, I'm seeing mostly 2000 SQL 2008 in the field today, so I'm hopeful that the folks still running SQL 2005 are going to be in the minority
Right.
as we move forward to 2012.
So what are some of the other pain points, Pete?
Oh boy, it's a good question. So really understand. I'm finding folks are a little bit concerned about just understanding what's going to change as they go through that upgrade process. So, it starts, I kind of like to think of this migration or this upgrade process as being a bottom-up process where we're going to deal with the root management server last.
Right.
So we know fairly early on that we're going to bring our agents up to the 2012 rev, because 2012 can talk to R2.
Yep.
We'll want to upgrade a management server to 2012, and immediately when we think about upgrading our management servers, we need to remember that our R2 console will be used to approve the agent upgrade. So when I start my upgrade, I start by upgrading a management server, which is immediately going to throw some agents in into the pending
Pending update.
Help me here, pending management
Right.
node in my in my administration space. So then I need to use my R2 console to start approving agents, so they begin to get that software rolling out. And when I get my agents done, then I can upgrade the rest of my management servers and my gateways and my agents. Because no doubt a lot of environments are going to have agents that need to be manually dealt with. But we're going to upgrade our first management server, approve the agents, and then we're going to upgrade the rest of our management servers, our gateways, and our agents, except the RMS. And to hit a couple of FAQs there, certificate-based authentication. So for your agents that are manually installed and outside trust boundaries, the mutual authentication via certificates is just as it was previously. The gateway role, as it was previously. So those are going to be processes that are familiar to experienced Ops Manager 2007 administrators. But it's that RMS role that we save for the end. And it's at this point that you're going to have a decision to make. So the upgrade path is clear. We first, do all of our hardware refreshes and bringing up of our management servers and SQL to Windows 2008 R2 and SQL 2008 R2. I heard a rumor that Denali is on the roadmap for the Ops Manager team. No confirmation if they're going to support that or not. So
Right.
we'll see what happens. But we make all those investments in getting to the current versions on the software, getting our hardware updated, getting to Ops Manager R2, and then upgrading our first management server, at which point all of our agents go into that pending management node, which we've all seen with CU1 through CU5 on Ops Manager 2007 R2, right?
Yeah, the agents pop into a pending update mode, and you go in and just approve those. It'll go off and do what it needs to do.
And so that'll be totally familiar to most folks. And then when we hit this point where we're down to the root management server, we have two options. We have option one, which is run the upgrade from the RMS. Install a new OM12 console, and then we're all good.
Yep.
And then we have to upgrade reporting, at that point.
Right.
Option two would be to run an upgrade from an OM12 management server, so we could kind of keep our old management server around and kind of look at this as a DR, a disaster recovery fallback. There is no disaster recovery in the beta. There's actually a mention in there of backup and disaster recovery in the beta release. So as part of your maintenance, you have to plan for all that, and I'm
Hmm.
sure that'll all come in time. So we'll see where that fleshes out.
So the
But
DR you're talking about is a rollback DR scenario, or
yeah. Trying to basically stage a rollback option for your OM 2007 environment. So if
right?
you run an upgrade from your OM 2007 RMS and it fails, you're potentially going to be in some trouble. If you
Right.
install a new OM12, if you do an upgrade from an OM12 management server, then potentially some capability to recover if you have a problem.
Right, but that would,
I guess is what I'm saying.
yeah. I'm guessing that there's database
Needless to say, though, if you're
changes.
not in the TAP program, which has long since been closed, you're not going to be doing any of this in um, a production environment.
No.
I've done quite a few of these in the lab, and worked with one TAP customer with some issues, and I can't say that I've seen this upgrade process really have many problems. I mean, certainly nothing catastrophic when we get to that root management server.
Sure.
So
I'm going to assume, although I know the answer, but there's no doubt database changes that are made to the schema on that final step from 2007 to 2012. So I guess consideration needs to be made that if you do keep a 2007 management server floating around and you do need to do a rollback, the obvious step is going to be that you need to restore your database backup.
yeah. The rollback is going to require quite a lot of work in that respect, potentially. And if you look at the deployment guide for 2012 for the beta, there's not a lot of rollback assistance in there.
Right.
So if the wizard encounters a problem, the upgrade wizard will roll back to the degree it can.
Okay.
Um, but there's not a lot of recovery documentation or support if you have a big problem. So you want good backups and
Yeah.
and good backups close by to be sure.
I mean, there's obviously a hole there to fill within the community if once the product RTMs and we get a look at the documentation, if there is still a hole there, then I'm pretty confident that hole will be filled by the community and the very strong blogging presence that Ops Manager has.
Yeah, I think that's a true statement.
Okay. So what else? As far as the upgrade and migration path goes, I think the migration path is well covered. So
Yeah. So known issues on the beta right now. If you're not in a production environment, it's not such a big deal. We don't have the disaster recovery feature that's available in OM 2007 if we lose all of our management servers.
right.
We don't have that capability to recover an OM 12 management group.
Yep.
So, when we're going from beta to release candidate to RTM, we'll have to see what the official supported paths are there. But I think if you're using beta in anything other than an isolated test environment, you're probably going to need to plan a similar outage that you do in your OM 2007 to OM 12 upgrade process, because the points where you'll have some downtime are going to be when you upgrade your database and your data warehouse to those new versions. As you mentioned, the schema is going to be expanded there.
Right.
So you'll have to sit around and twiddle your thumbs as database upgrade happens. And of course, when we go, if they support upgrade from beta to RC and RC to RTM, then there's likely going to be some time to upgrade management servers. That's potentially going to introduce some downtime.
Sure. And I guess...
But that's pretty
Sorry.
minor in the grand scheme of things, though.
Yep. I guess we should also point out that those I guess are of a more cautious nature, it's always worthwhile running up a 2007 R2 test lab and then doing an upgrade through there so that you're at least familiar with the concept if you're doing it yourself, that you've done it, you've run it, you know the ins and outs and the pitfalls, and you can continue on with a greater level of confidence that what's going to happen is as it should.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to say it.
Thank you. So yes.
And then if we have an all-in-one environment, so we've been talking about how we would do this, the enterprise flavor. If we have an all-in-one environment, then this gets much simpler, just as it is.
Yes.
With Ops Manager 2007, back everything up and hit the go button.
Absolutely. And cross your fingers.
We're off to the races.
And cross your fingers. Although that's not required as much these days, I guess. The whole finger crossing.
Yeah, I think, I'm biased in the interest of full disclosure, but I think the Ops Manager team does as good or better a job than any of the System Center teams in listening to customers and bringing a solution to the table that addresses the pain points in an effective way. I'm sure the folks that are close to those other product teams in a lot of cases would say the same thing. But the setup experience, I can look at the setup experience now and see a lot of the requests we made through the product life cycle of 2007 and the beta cycles of 2012. The upgrade process, I think, is as close to painless as it can be when you're undergoing an architecture change.
Right.
We haven't really called it out, but we're losing that root management server, losing that single point of failure, and going to a pool of sorts. And you're really from just to clarify that the loss of the root management server from an agent perspective, your agents are still going to report to management servers just as they always have, your Windows agents, that is.
Yep.
Where this pool takes over is really on our network monitoring workloads, where your network devices are going
Nope.
to report to a pool of management servers that we define in cross-platform devices, just like the network. They report to a pool as well. So we get the automated failover
Right.
that we didn't have in 2007. And then the other important thing is that workload on the RMS that handles all of those background maintenance activities, synchronizing, aggregating data in our data warehouse and calculating our instance space, our state, and so forth. So, in that default pool of management servers, one of those management servers has to assume that workload, to calculate the instance space and so forth, and you actually don't specify which one does that. It's handled for you.
Right.
You can, in the user interface, though, see which one runs that load. So that's actually kind of a frequently asked question, is if I can't control, which of my management servers is doing that, how am I going to know which one is?
Sure.
And so we can go to the UI, and there's if you have a task, there's a task that targets the health service. It's called get top level instances by something like get top level instances monitored by a pool member.
Mm-hmm.
That basically allows you to see which workflows are running on your management servers. And to answer, so the thing that comes to my mind immediately there is if I can't control where that's run or how load is distributed between management servers in a pool, I need to be careful about my hardware decisions. because ops manager is not going to go out and look for me to see that I have one massive management server running, quad core Xeons and another running in a tiny VM with not enough memory.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. You're not going to get hardware aware load balancing.
at least not yet.
No. No. This is true. Although, I guess in an enterprise situation as well, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you can have multiple server pools. So you could use that to your advantage, and potentially have a management pool for the RMS roles as they stand today, and then a second one for agent-based assignment.
Yeah. So you get a default management server pool when you installed, and that's designed to handle your that formerly RMS workloads and so forth, the defaults there.
Yep.
When you discover your network devices or your cross-platform devices, the specification of a pool is now handled in the UI, and the pool is going to prompt you to establish the pool and put one or more servers in there.
Yep.
And I don't know if it's in the public beta build or not. I don't remember right off the top of my head because I've seen the builds are beginning to blur in my mind. So, I'm sure if it's not in the beta build, by RTM, there'll be a warning when you do the network device or cross-platform setup. If you try to create a pool of one, certainly it's going to warn you and say, hey, the point of a pool is to give me at least two. So,
right. Yep.
And I think from a consistency perspective, it would also make sense that our management servers in a management group should all be at the same OS and service pack level going forward. So I think it's going to be pretty important to coordinate update management and compliance in that respect.
Yep.
To make sure that we have consistency across the management servers. And there's not a single setting that comes to mind right now that I would call out as one that's likely going to be changed. But if if there's a registry setting, for example, that we have to change on one management server, we're going to have to think about how we make sure that setting gets updated on multiple management servers.
Right.
So there's going to be a new bear with me while I think of the word, but there's going to be a new level of thinking there, a new paradigm that we have to consider. Paradigm is the word I was looking for.
There you go.
So there's a new paradigm we have to consider. The first thing that comes to my mind is group policy preferences. I still run into folks that aren't really familiar with group policy preferences and what those allow us to do. So if you're one of those people, let me say that group policy preferences on Windows 2008 R2 will allow you to control the values in registry settings that aren't normally accessible by group policy without having to create a custom group policy template that back in the Windows 2000 days, in Windows 2003 days, would take us many hours or days. It's now a very simple UI-driven operation.
Right.
So when we go to that RMS, that management server pool, if we need to touch multiple management servers in their registry, as we sometimes do today, it's going to be easily done through group policy preferences.
So that's group policy preferences on 2008. Is there a limitation also on the client side, so on the server side, that they must be at a 2008 level, or is it a group policy application, or is it applied by group policy and it's sort of OS agnostic to that extent?
Yeah, so group policy preferences are somewhat OS agnostic in that if you're not running Windows 2008 for the supported versions of Windows that are running today, they do have a client-side little fix you can install that enables preferences to down-level clients. And I forget which .old version it goes back to, but it goes back a long way. So certainly Windows 2000's off the table.
Sure.
And XP is no longer supported, but in the Windows 2003 realm and Vista or Windows 2007 group policy preferences are doable. So.
Sure. Okay. So I guess the idea behind the app pool certainly makes a lot of sense. And it does provide us with a far more stable and load-balanced approach to clustering the management server. Up until now, it's felt like an afterthought. The RMS clustering process that's implemented with Operations Manager. So this process gives us that pseudo clustering via the application, via the server pools, and we can then create secondary management server pools for our agent-based assignment, and we can continue to create additional server pools to handle, as you mentioned, network device and cross-plat device assignment as well.
Right. And I wanted to touch on just a few more FAQs that I think are going to be the common questions.
Fire away.
Okay, there's 3 or 4 that come to mind. So first question, will my R2 agents still work? And the answer is yes, they're going to work until the management group is fully upgraded to Ops Manager 2012. And once the Ops Manager DB is at 2012, and you've upgraded away from our legacy architecture, then the Ops Manager 2012 management servers, at the point that your database is upgraded, they're going to, basically block requests.
Right.
How do I roll back if something goes wrong? So, we talked about a management group upgrade from a secondary management server. So if we don't start on the root management server, it gives us some capability.
Yep.
To get back, and we can have the, I forgot what I was going to say there.
That's all right.
Cumulative update was a question you asked. Today, that stands at CU4.
Okay.
And like I say, I don't know if that's where it's going to wind up at RTM. It may be CU5 by the time we get to RTM, but today they're supporting CU4. And off the top of my head, I haven't seen anything in the community that tells me that I wouldn't upgrade to CU5.
No, in fact, it would be preferable.
You have anything?
No. I mean, CU4 had its issues. I haven't seen anything that would indicate that CU5 has anything major. So by all accounts, it's relatively safe.
Yeah, CU3 had a blocker. CU3.
Sorry, CU3. Yeah, what am I saying?
CU3 for Ops Manager 2007 R2 actually broke Pro integration with VMM.
Yes, it did. Yep.
And so if you were running CU3, that was kind of a big problem.
Yeah, that was, and you did need to do the CU4 update. That's right. So as far as FAQ goes, what else have we got?
Last one. So if we do multi-home and agent to report to an R2 management group and an OM12 management group, what's the performance impact? I would say that generally speaking, it's exactly the same as the impact if you're multi-homing to multiple 2007 management groups. You're going to run 2 sets of workflows, one for each management server, one for each management group.
Right.
And even though cookdown for the script-based workflows are going to feed script output potentially into multiple workflows on each side, you're still going to have that performance impact, a larger agent footprint because you're running twice the workflows, give or take.
Sure. So would you expect to see some alert latency coming in on multi-homed agents?
Maybe. The thing about alert latency is it's dependent at multiple layers. So if our agent has beefy, if it's beefy hardware where we're running that OM7 and 2012 agent, then maybe it doesn't queue there. And if our management groups are finely tuned, so they're not queuing, then maybe it works there. But I think at the end of the day, it's a product of both our horsepower at the client server and database layers.
Yep.
And also that we've, rid ourselves of those unhealthy workflows that can crop up from time to time and cause queuing.
Sure. I did have a question, but much like yourself, I've forgotten. What was the first FAQ topic you brought up?
The first FAQ was... I no longer remember.
Fair enough. We'll move on. That's okay. So is there anything else in the show notes that you had that that's worth a mention at this stage?
I think those are the big concerns and considerations for the most part. As an afterthought, is audit collection services upgradable? Yes.
Yep.
For anybody that's actually running that. So at least in the beta, I didn't see the archival feature that we're missing from audit collection services. So we'll, if that doesn't show up in RTM, then I think that's going to tell us something about, Microsoft's commitment
The future
to the future of the ACS feature.
Yep. Okay. Well, if there is nothing else, do you have any tips or tricks for our fine listeners? Anything, any websites that have caught your attention that that might be worth looking at, aside from YouTube and some of the other more dubious websites? Anything you want to share with our good listeners?
Yeah, I think everybody needs to get their hands on System Center Orchestrator, which incidentally will work with Ops Manager 2012 via the Ops Manager 2007 integration pack. So start investigating using Orchestrator for your recovery tasks rather than using the recovery tasks
within
and
the
diagnostic tasks.
Yep.
So it's going to be much less script dependent, more IT pro friendly, and a lot more reliable. So, if we were to look at the evolution of a product, I've heard scientists say that in the evolutionary cycle, people will next lose their wisdom teeth, or the appendix will cease to exist. I would think that diagnostic and recovery tasks are going to become much less used in the very near future.
Yep, and on that point, on the Opalis/Orchestrator, if you want to win some brownie points with your bosses, or with your line managers, as it were, get it set up in a test lab and start to build out some examples that you can show to them, showing them the capabilities of Orchestrator/Opalis, and there aren't too many people that go, ooh, and can really see the benefit.
Take that away, you're going to save me money.
Yes, exactly. People who do have KPIs that involve cutting costs within their department, these sorts of things, Opalis is the perfect fit for that scenario.
Yeah, Dan, and to that end, the Opalis, the Microsoft course for Opalis,
yep.
Which, in the interest of full disclosure, I had a hand in authoring, hit the Microsoft courseware library yesterday.
Right.
And there are many hands-on labs out on the TechNet virtual labs. I would say there are more than 10 hours of virtual labs from the very basic on up through advanced and System Center integrated out there.
Yep.
So
definitely worth jumping on over there. And do they have VHD available? Pre-built environment? I haven't checked, to be honest.
Everything is hosted that I've seen thus far, because the actual course itself was more or less reproduced in a virtual form over on the Microsoft Partner website, but that one is hosted as well. I would say that if you look at those TechNet virtual labs, that you can duplicate what you need to run workflows like that. And we've been posting more and more workflows out in the community, and Charles Joy from Microsoft has a great many that you can import, straight away into Opalis or Orchestrator, either one. But I think for corporate users, Opalis is really hot right now, and every customer we talk to, Opalis almost always comes up as a sidebar.
Sure.
So I definitely say, it's definitely brownie points with the boss, as you said, if you bring it up before a consultant's brought in to deal with it, because I think that's part of that blue-collar IT versus white-collar IT discussion. As we see this pressing for the cloud, you want to be the guy that's handling the automation and the orchestration with your System Center products. I think we're going to see a refocusing of our roles, from very product-specific silos to suite-specific roles. So bosses and Microsoft are going to begin to ask us to really understand, not ops manager really well, and nothing else, but they're going to ask us to understand a lot of things at probably level 200.
Sure.
So we can make things work together. So,
I mean, one thing I've noticed on my various engagements is the increase, as you say, in the number of. Interestingly, in the UK here, they seem to use the phrase tool teams, but there's been a lot of teams popping up that are, enterprise management tools and things like this, which incorporates config manager, ops manager, Opalis, so on and so forth. And these teams are becoming increasingly, all of the other teams are becoming far more increasingly dependent on these tool teams to deliver the automation and the monitoring and so forth.
Exactly. It's good to be on the inside of that circle.
It is.
If you can at all help it.
Indeed. Well, I think that might just about bring us to the end of another exciting episode, Pete. Please tell me you've got plans for this weekend that exclude work.
I do have plans that involve my lovely wife, but my weekend ends with a flight to the East Coast for System Center and Opalis.
Well, you enjoy your weekend with your lovely wife. And I will remind our good listeners that to jump on over to the System Center podcast website and get yourself in with a chance to win a bundle of great books. As I said at the top of the show, this is really about driving new listeners to the show. We feel that we've got something to offer and that we're providing some pretty good information. Not so much me, but definitely Pete. So I would encourage everybody to tell a friend, pass it along, so that we can grow this into a network that can provide more and more details and more content to the System Center community and beyond. It's really sort of really wanting to take an enterprise bent to the podcasting world. There's a plethora of consumer-grade podcasts out there and not much content around the enterprise. So that's the market we're targeting. So, Pete, again, thank you for joining me.
Hey, thanks as always, Dan. I enjoyed it.
It's always a pleasure. And you have been watching, possibly, but more than likely listening to the System Center, to Inside Central. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next time.